today's featured amp is going to be a 1956 National Aztec. You know, when you have a collection of amplifiers, people always ask if the house caught fire, God forbid, which one would you grab first and run out the door with? And I'd have to say this one's going to be in at least one hand, okay? I just love it to death. It's real old-fashioned, real quaint, and has just a wonderful warm tone. Let's take a real close look at it inside and out, and then we'll listen to it, okay? Okay, let's take a close-up look here at the front. It and the central part of the body are covered with a brown leather grain Tolex material that's not only real good looking, but it's very durable. It's held up a lot better than, as we'll see, the Tweed. The main thing that catches your eye, though, of course, are these speaker grills. They just offer a whole lot of protection to the speakers, and they're just very unusual. I've never seen an amp use grills like this, and when you're not using the amp, of course, your wife can always use these to grate cheese with. Okay, now let's look at the Tweed that provides the contrast in the banding here. It's not at all like Fender Tweed. It has no lines in it or anything like that. It's just sort of a very coarse, fairly heavy-duty Tweed material, and like Tweed always does, in the corners and high spots it tends to wear through. The handle is covered with a similar material. This one's a little ratty. You can see the laminations of rubber. I don't sense any steel central piece like you get on the Fender handle, so this one's a little suspect. When you're carrying this around, I usually don't carry it by the handle for fear if something came loose and this thing hit the ground, I would be very tempted to kill myself. Okay, let's turn it around and take a look at the back. Okay, as you can see, the back is completely covered with the Tweed material. We've got a really nice chrome control panel at the top. We've got the power supply chassis at the bottom with the two output tubes and the rectifier. And then, as we'll see when I open it up, up above, we've got the preamp chassis. Notice those speakers in the back. We'll get a much closer look at them in a few minutes. Now the control panel here is rather complex, and sadly the silk screening did not adhere all that well to the chrome plating, as it generally doesn't, so a lot of it's rubbed off, so you're left with all of these kind of confusing inputs and controls. Let me go down the line and explain what they are and how they work. Obvious here, of course, the fuse and pilot. This is going to be the tone control for everything. Okay, master tone, I leave it in like a 5 out of 10 position. This is going to be the on-off here. There's no toggle on this. On-off and volume for these three inputs. It's not the volume for that one. Now, these two over here are called bass inputs, and they tend to favor low frequencies. This one is called the normal input, which will not favor any frequency particularly, but portray them all. This is a separate volume and microphone input. Okay, if you have a microphone for harmonica, or I'm thinking maybe a steel guitar with low output, you plug it in here, and then this is what controls the volume for this input. This still has to be in the on position, but this will now become your volume control. Okay, and this is for the foot switch, and this is the tremolo control. And the tremolo will work on any of these inputs. So if, say, I've got it turned on here, I've got my volume up here, I'm plugged into the normal input, I want a little tremolo, I turn on the tremolo, and once you turn it on, this becomes the speed control. And straight up is kind of just a neutral speed. I'm going to give you a little sound check on this amp with the tremolo in different settings. Okay, so that's the control panel of this beast. Rather complicated, and it's sad that so much of the writing has been lost on this one. Now normally I'd say let's pull this back and take a look, but this is a front-loaded cabinet. The back is all one piece with the cabinet. There is no way that you open the back of this thing. You have to remove the speaker baffle and enter it from the front. So let's do that. Okay, I removed the 4 screws from the speaker baffle. And let's pull it out and take a look inside. Wow, talk about easy speaker access. Once you open the baffle and lay it down, you've got your three, these are probably 6 by 11 Rola speakers. And it's just exactly what you want to see when you open the amp. 550-20, 550-20, 550-20, which is, I see this number in all sorts of National amplifiers. Oh, and it should be said too that this amp was made by Valco in Chicago for National. National didn't make their own amps. They sold a lot of steel guitars and things of that sort, and they needed amplifiers, so they turned to Valco for them. Valco makes a lot of my favorite amplifiers in the world, and this definitely is one of them. Let's take a look at the markings on the speaker. 285, 519. Now, 285 is Rola, 1955, the 19th week. And this, again, is just what you want to see. They all have exactly the same number. So this is the original match set of very uncommon Rola oval speakers and output transformer that came with this amplifier. That's when you open one up and you see that, it always warms the cockles of your heart. And if your cockles weren't warm enough, then we take a look inside and see a beautiful unmolested power supply with the two 606 output tubes. Okay, just as nice and clean as they come. Massive power transformer and a clearly labeled 5V4 rectifier. I got to tell you, when I first checked this, there was a 5U4 occupying that spot. And I guess people think, oh, 5U4, 5V4, they're close together in the alphabet, so they must be okay. Well, it's not really, because the 5V4 draws 2 amps of current, whereas the 5U4 draws 3. And this transformer could handle it, I can tell you. I mean, it did quite easily. But if this had been a marginal transformer and they'd put in the 5U4 over here, it could well have burned out that winding in the transformer. So you have to be real careful. Check in your tube book to see if what the current draw is on the rectifiers before you start switching them. Also down here we have a 6SC7 for the phase inverter. So the whole output section of the amplifier is located here, as well as the power supply. Isolated from the preamp, which is in the attic. We'll check it out in a minute, which kind of cuts down on the hum. Okay, it's a good idea. This capacitor, some of the values checked out. I had to replace several of the filter capacitors in this amp. I'll be honest, I only do that if it's needed. Some people go in and they just wholesale rip out every electrolytic capacitor in an amplifier and put in brand new Chinese capacitors and feel good about themselves. I'll tell you, if they don't need changing, I think that's silly. I think the capacitors that are in these in the first place are probably better than the new ones you put in, as long as they work. So it's you know, just a personal choice, but it's my choice, and it's the one I made on every amp I own, and knock on wood, so far it's worked out. Speaking of wood, look at the knots in this baby. Okay, there's knots galore. They must have shot for lumber in the same place that I did and Fender did for their cabinets. You gotta love it. This must boost the cabinet resonance somewhat. One conformity in all Valco amps is somewhere on the cabinet there'll be a little metal plate like this that has the serial number. This serial number is X58877, and you can look those up on the internet. The numbers are well documented, and it says this is 1956, which goes along very well with the codes on the speakers, which are from the 19th week of 1955. Well, here's the preamp up in the attic. Okay, up here on a nice metal chassis. It's just right angle sheet metal with this heavy cable that communicates down with the power supply and the output section of the amp. We've got on the, well, let's go in order. This is the first tube to receive the signal, and it's a 5879. A little unusual in National amps, more common in Gibson amps. This is going to be a 6SJ7 and a 6SQ7. You can see there's point-to-point wiring. and no expense spared on the fine shield, okay, for the inputs. This looks like galvanized sheet metal from an old duct or something, an air conditioner duct. And the other thing I don't know is why they shield from above. You'd think you'd shield underneath because the noise is down here, okay? I mean, we're not worried about rainfall or anything, hopefully. So I don't get it. But anyway, I left it there in all its pristine glory. Okay, oh look, we've got another knot up here. So, fairly straightforward. All the innards spread throughout the cabinet. Let's button it up and put it all back together and see how it sounds. Okay, now we're plugged into the bass input. The tone control is in a neutral position. Okay, now we're plugged into the treble input with the volume and tone at the same settings. Now I'm plugged into the microphone input with its volume control at the same settings as the previous two. Now the bass input with the tremolo on in a neutral position. Now I'm plugged into the treble input with the tremolo on the same position as it was before. Treble input with a tremolo set real slow. A treble input, a tremolo set at its highest speed. Well, that about does it for the mighty 1956 National Aztec amplifier. I hope you enjoyed what you saw and that you'll stay tuned for future releases. You might even consider subscribing. I've got a special going on this week of free subscriptions. Regardless, I hope to see you again on the next video. I really appreciate your time and interest, and I'll see you around. Bye. Hey, Rusty, you ready to work on some amps? No, guess not.